On a quiet Monday morning in Washington, D.C., federal workers logged into their systems as usual. The coffee brewed, the printers hummed. On the surface, it was just another day in the vast machinery of the United States government. But somewhere in that machinery, something had already gone wrong. An innocuous-looking email had arrived in the inbox of a mid-level employee working for a federal benefits program. It appeared official, complete with a government logo, internal references, and even the signature of a known supervisor. There was a simple instruction: click the link and confirm credentials due to a routine security update. They clicked, and in that moment, they opened the gates. Unbeknownst to them, and to their agency, that one click was all it took for a team of hackers to infiltrate the U.S. government's payment systems. Over the next several days, these cybercriminals moved stealthily through layers of internal infrastructure, escalating access, impersonating authorized users, and silently siphoning funds into offshore accounts. By the time the breach was detected, the damage was already done. $50 million had vanished from government coffers, all without a single trace of physical evidence. This wasn't fiction. It wasn't a Hollywood script. It was real. And it wasn't the first time. What made this cyber heist so shocking wasn't just the amount of money stolen, though that alone was staggering. It was how easily it was done. Through phishing emails, credential harvesting, and exploiting poorly maintained legacy systems, the hackers didn't need to break in. They were invited in. The story of how $50 million was stolen reveals a chilling truth. Even the most powerful government in the world can be rendered helpless by a well-executed cyber attack. The U.S. government, despite spending billions on defense and intelligence, still relies on outdated systems, some dating back decades. Many departments lack real-time monitoring, multi-factor authentication, or modern encryption protocols. In some agencies, even password changes aren't mandatory. Hackers knew this. They studied internal structures, understood procurement systems, and targeted the weak links: overworked employees, understaffed IT departments, and siloed cybersecurity strategies. Once inside, they created fake beneficiaries, rerouted legitimate payments, and used the system against itself. Funds were approved, transferred, and signed off, all by automated processes or stolen credentials. No red flags, no alerts. By the time financial auditors noticed irregularities, the digital fingerprints had been wiped clean. The money had passed through dozens of shell companies, converted to cryptocurrency, laundered through darknet exchanges, and sent overseas, beyond recovery. The breach prompted investigations from the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and even the NSA. But by then, the trail had gone cold. And the public? Most never even heard about it. Buried under classified memos and vague press releases, the full details were quietly swept aside, written off as unauthorized access or financial mismanagement. But make no mistake, this was a full-blown cyber robbery. And the worst part, it could happen again. In the coming minutes, we'll uncover exactly how these hackers pulled off the theft, who they might be, and what it says about the state of cybersecurity in the most powerful nation on Earth. We'll look at the vulnerabilities they exploited, the shocking gaps in government infrastructure, and how a single email turned into a $50 million disaster. This isn't just a story about hackers, it's a warning. Because if the U.S. government can be hacked this easily, what about your bank account, your medical records, your private data? The digital battlefield is everywhere, and the enemy is invisible. Let's begin. The heist didn't begin with advanced code or sophisticated software. It began with something much simpler: social engineering. Step 1. Phishing, the initial entry point. The hackers started with reconnaissance. They spent weeks, maybe months, studying the structure of a particular federal agency that handled public benefits and small business loans. Public employee directories, LinkedIn profiles, and previous data leaks gave them everything they needed: names, roles, emails, and even office routines. Then, they launched a targeted phishing campaign. Not the sloppy spam emails we often ignore. These were carefully crafted, personalized messages sent to select government employees. One message stood out: a fake internal alert warning of mandatory system maintenance. It came from what appeared to be an internal IT address, and included a link to log in and verify credentials. One employee, just one, clicked. The login page looked official. It had the correct logo, language, and formatting. The employee entered their credentials. Within seconds, those details were sent directly to the attackers. Just like that, the door was open. Step 2. Lateral movement, taking over the network. With legitimate credentials in hand, the hackers entered the agency's internal systems. But they didn't attack immediately, they moved quietly. They used a technique called lateral movement, hopping from one system to another, escalating access slowly, looking for administrative privileges and less protected departments. They mapped the network, identified key personnel, and uncovered poorly secured servers that hadn't been patched in years. One such server gave them access to the Treasury Disbursement System, the platform that processes billions in government payments. At this point, they were invisible, operating under real login credentials with no malware alerts and no detection from the agency's outdated monitoring tools. Step 3. Creating fake vendors and beneficiaries. Once inside the payment system, the hackers began injecting data. They created fake contractor profiles, non-existent vendors, and false beneficiaries, mimicking the formats of real applications. In some cases, they even cloned real businesses, changing only the routing number and contact information. To avoid suspicion, they kept the amounts low at first, $50,000 here, $80,000 there. But over the course of several days, the amounts grew, sometimes reaching seven-figure payouts. In total, over 60 fake transactions were processed, all approved using real credentials and real agency workflows. To internal systems, everything looked normal. There were no red flags because the payments followed valid procedures. Only the recipients were fake. Step 4. Routing the money. The stolen funds were routed through a network of shell companies, mostly registered overseas. The money landed in business accounts in countries like the UAE, Hong Kong, Nigeria, and Panama. From there, it was quickly converted to cryptocurrency, then funneled through mixers and tumblers, online services designed to erase the trail by blending illegal funds with legitimate transactions. By the time U.S. authorities noticed the missing funds, the money had already disappeared into a maze of blockchain wallets, foreign regulations, and uncooperative jurisdictions. Step 5. Covering their tracks. The final step was digital cleanup. The hackers deleted login histories, wiped logs, and set up auto-forwarding rules to reroute confirmation emails to dummy accounts. They used encrypted communication channels, anonymous IPs, and temporary cloud servers that vanished after use. By the time IT staff noticed irregularities in the payment system, it was too late. The attackers were long gone, and the $50 million was, effectively, unrecoverable. This wasn't just a hack. It was a step-by-step manipulation of trust, technology, and time. The attackers didn't need to break through firewalls with brute force. They walked in through the front door, pretended to belong, and quietly robbed the system blind, all while the government watched, unknowingly, from the inside. For days, the cybercriminals' operation ran undetected. Fake vendors were paid, digital trails were erased, and government systems appeared to be working as usual. But eventually, the system's flaws collided with the real world. How the breach was discovered. The breach wasn't discovered by a government cybersecurity team, nor by a high-tech defense AI system. It was uncovered by an alert bank employee at a commercial institution that regularly processes government transactions. While reviewing daily reports, the employee noticed an unusual payment, a large wire transfer from a federal agency to a company that had no history of doing business with the government. What raised alarm wasn't just the amount, but the speed at which the funds were being moved. The account had been opened recently, the business address was a P.O. box, and the money was already being transferred through multiple shell accounts. That red flag triggered a formal alert to the U.S. Department of the Treasury. Treasury analysts immediately began digging through internal payment records. What they found was staggering. Not one, but dozens of suspicious transactions, all routed to newly created vendor accounts. The amounts ranged from tens of thousands to millions of dollars. What shocked them most was that the payments had been approved using valid credentials and followed standard procedures. That's when they knew something was wrong. Very wrong. Agencies mobilized. Within 24 hours, a full-scale investigation was launched. The U.S. government doesn't take financial theft lightly, especially from its own systems. Several key agencies jumped into action. The FBI Cyber Division assumed the lead on the criminal side, coordinating with field offices across the country. The Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, initiated a full technical forensic review. The National Security Agency, NSA, and its elite Tailored Access Operations Unit were brought in to examine whether the breach had foreign intelligence implications. The U.S. Secret Service, which also has jurisdiction over financial cybercrime, joined in to track monetary flows. Initial containment focused on freezing accounts, shutting down compromised credentials, and isolating affected systems. Within days, emergency security protocols were activated across multiple departments. Initial theories versus real findings. At first, the theories were simple. It had to be an inside job. The transactions were too clean, too well structured, and came from legitimate logins. Investigators initially suspected that a disgruntled employee or contractor with privileged access had manipulated internal payment systems. After all, it wouldn't be the first time. In 2022, a former IT analyst at a state agency was caught siphoning funds through ghost vendors. But as the forensic teams dug deeper, they found evidence that told a more complex story. Digital breadcrumbs revealed traces of advanced phishing campaigns launched weeks before the attack. At least one employee had fallen for a fake login portal, unknowingly handing over their credentials. Malware logs indicated remote desktop access from IP addresses that had been masked through virtual private networks, VPNs, and relay servers spread across multiple countries. The precision of the movements, lateral access through servers, privilege escalation, creation of fake accounts that mimicked real vendor formats, pointed to professional hackers with experience targeting large institutions. Worse, some of the malware tools used were linked to previous attacks by state-sponsored groups, though nothing definitive could be proven. In short, the breach had started with a simple click but quickly evolved into a high-level operation, possibly aided by criminal syndicates or foreign entities. The turning point. The turning point in the investigation came when one of the shell companies used to launder the money was tied to a digital wallet previously involved in dark web transactions. That connection led investigators to a larger network already under surveillance. It didn't crack the case wide open, but it gave federal agents a direction, a name, and a trail to follow. The response wasn't just about plugging the hole, it was about answering the most important question: if it happened once, what's stopping it from happening again? As federal agencies scrambled to contain the fallout from the $50 million heist, one question echoed across every conference room, press briefing, and classified intel call: who did this? The forensic trail, though faint, offered clues. The attack had been meticulous. Every move showed patience, planning, and a deep understanding of U.S. government systems. This wasn't the work of a lone hacker in a basement. It was the hallmark of a coordinated group, experienced, well-funded, and anonymous. Early indicators pointed toward an infamous cybercrime syndicate known as Fin7, a group believed to have ties to Eastern Europe, particularly Ukraine and Russia. Fin7 has been linked to numerous attacks against major corporations, including banks, restaurants, and even airlines. Their specialty? Social engineering and stealthy infiltration, just like this. But they weren't the only suspects. Another group floated to the top of the suspect list, APT-29, also known as Cozy Bear, a hacking team widely believed to operate under the Russian intelligence agency, SVR. APT-29 had previously breached U.S. government systems, including the State Department and the White House during the Obama administration, and was famously linked to the SolarWinds attack in 2020. The level of precision, the familiarity with federal structures, and the ability to disappear so effectively led some investigators to suspect state-sponsored involvement. But attribution in cybercrime is murky at best. Hackers often borrow code from other groups, use false flags to mislead investigators, and route traffic through compromised servers worldwide. Some parts of the attack even mimicked the tactics of North Korea's Lazarus Group, which is notorious for financial cyber thefts used to fund the regime's operations. In short, it was a digital hall of mirrors. What the investigation revealed. Over several weeks, the FBI, NSA, and international cybercrime units traced cryptocurrency movements, analyzed phishing infrastructure, and studied malware samples found on infected government machines. They identified the use of Cobalt Strike, a legitimate cybersecurity tool often hijacked by hackers for stealthy command and control operations. They found evidence of obfuscated PowerShell scripts, zero-day exploits, and domain fronting techniques, tactics commonly associated with elite hacker collectives. Eventually, two aliases surfaced from the dark web, Black Phantom and Ghost Lancer, believed to be the handles of key individuals behind the heist. These personas had been active on cybercrime forums for years, selling stolen credentials, tools, and exploit kits. Despite this progress, no arrests were immediately made. The reason? Jurisdiction and protection. Both suspects were believed to be operating out of countries that don't extradite to the United States. Even worse, they may be working under the unofficial protection of their home governments, who tolerate cybercriminals in exchange for information or strategic favors. The ongoing manhunt. As of now, no individuals have been publicly charged, and no money has been recovered. The hackers behind the $50 million theft remain free, likely still online, and possibly planning their next target. However, the case is not closed. Interpol has issued notices. International cyber task forces continue tracking related transactions. U.S. intelligence agencies have classified dossiers on key suspects and digital fingerprints that could help in future operations. Behind the scenes, law enforcement is quietly working with private cybersecurity firms, blockchain analysts, and foreign governments to pressure these groups, expose their infrastructure, and, if possible, take them down. The chilling truth: the hackers didn't just steal $50 million, they exposed just how unprepared even the most powerful government on Earth can be in the face of modern cyber warfare. And unless they're stopped, it's only a matter of time before they strike again. The theft of $50 million wasn't just a cybercrime, it was a wake-up call. For the U.S. government, the breach exposed glaring holes in its digital armor. For taxpayers, it raised a troubling question. How can one of the most technologically advanced nations on Earth lose millions without even realizing it? The financial fallout. In practical terms, the money is gone. Most of the funds were routed through international shell companies and laundered through cryptocurrency mixers before U.S. authorities even realized a breach had occurred. Only a fraction, less than 3%, was frozen in time. Who paid for the loss? You did. Taxpayer dollars foot the bill, directly or indirectly. Federal programs relying on the stolen funds had to be reimbursed through emergency budget reallocations. Small businesses and families expecting those payments faced delays. Some even missed critical deadlines for grants, loans, or relief programs, causing financial pain far beyond the original breach. The irony? These were the same systems created to deliver help to struggling Americans. Instead, they became a conduit for one of the most efficient digital robberies in history. The political and public response. In Congress, outrage followed confusion. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle demanded accountability. Hearings were held. Experts testified. Systemic flaws were laid bare. Outdated legacy systems, weak access controls, lack of centralized cybersecurity oversight, and chronic underfunding for IT infrastructure. A 2024 cybersecurity audit revealed that over 60% of federal systems still lacked multi-factor authentication. Dozens of departments were using software no longer supported by vendors. Some still relied on manual password spreadsheets. In other words, the breach wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. The public reaction ranged from disbelief to anger. But most disturbingly, many Americans had seen this before. From the OPM data breach to the SolarWinds attack, the government's vulnerability was already part of a growing pattern. This time, the cost was more than data. It was money, real public funds. Policy and security reforms. In the months following the breach, a series of emergency actions were rolled out. CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, was granted expanded authority to enforce minimum cybersecurity standards across all federal agencies. A new zero trust policy was mandated, requiring continuous identity verification for access to any federal system. All agencies were ordered to phase out unsupported software and undergo third-party penetration testing within 12 months. A federal cybersecurity resilience fund was created to rapidly modernize high-risk departments. On the tech side, Several departments have begun transitioning to encrypted, cloud-based systems with built-in behavioral analytics to flag suspicious activity in real time. Some even began partnering with private sector cybersecurity firms to stay ahead of emerging threats. Still, progress is slow, and the hackers, they remain at large. Final thoughts. The theft of $50 million wasn't just a digital crime. It was a proof of concept, a demonstration that even the most secure institutions are only as strong as their weakest employee, their most outdated server, or their most ignored update. It revealed a harsh truth. Cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue, it's a national security issue, a financial issue, a governance issue. The attackers didn't use tanks or bombs, they didn't storm the gates, they slipped in through a single email, exploited broken systems, and walked away rich, without ever showing their faces. The question now isn't just, how did this happen? It's, when will it happen again? Because in the digital age, theft doesn't always involve ski masks or safes. Sometimes, all it takes is a click.